The relentless, unforgiving march of time leaves its signature on every living thing. It is the universal law, the undisputed master of decay, etching lines of entropy across the canvas of existence. We accept these markings, the deepening folds around the eyes, the subtle decline in vitality, the map of decades drawn irrevocably onto the skin, as the necessary cost of living. Yet what if this consensus, this accepted truth of biological fate, were fundamentally flawed? What if the aged appearance we believe to be the inevitable outcome of 70, 80, or 90 years was, in reality, nothing more than a deeply ingrained, universally accepted suggestion? Imagine encountering a person who has crossed the threshold of 7 decades, whose eyes hold the wisdom and history of the long journey, yet whose skin defies the chronology. Picture a countenance smooth, radiant, possessing the luminous quality typically attributed to youth, not taut or artificially stretched, but organically vibrant, displaying a coherence, a structural integrity that seems to mock every known tenet of cellular senescence. This is not the result of advanced surgical intervention, nor the application of prohibitively expensive, hyper-complex chemical compounds. It is, perhaps impossibly, the outcome of an understanding so radical that it required the genius and the subsequent mysterious disappearance of one of the 20th century's most profound and misunderstood scientific minds, Dr. Jacobo Grinberg. This is the genesis of a narrative that challenges the very molecular foundations of aging, dragging the conversation away from serums and invasive procedures and thrusting it into the esoteric realm of quantum consciousness and the structural nature of reality itself.
And the improbable key to unlocking this startling secret, the mundane component that acts as the ultimate catalyst in this astonishing biological transformation, is palpable, residing at the intersection of the incredibly sophisticated and the utterly commonplace. How can the intricate, genetically coded processes of cellular aging, processes that involve telomere shortening, mitochondrial degradation, and the slow accumulation of oxidative stress, the very engine room of biological decline, be reversed or even entirely circumvented by something as rudimentary as sodium chloride? This apparent absurdity is precisely where the genius of Grinberg's legacy takes root.
Jacobo Grinberg Zilberbaum was not merely a neurophysiologist. He was a revolutionary cartographer of consciousness, a seeker who dared to map the interstitial space between matter and mind. His life's work, before his abrupt and inexplicable vanishing in 1994, centered on the foundational theory of Sintenergy. To understand the secret of the ageless face at 70, one must first grasp the terrifying and beautiful premise of Sintenergy. The idea that the physical universe, the world of objects, atoms, and biological tissue, the world we perceive as solid and absolute, is not primary. Instead, it is merely a low-resolution manifestation, a filtered projection arising from a fundamentally dense, high-complexity informational structure he termed the lattice space, or the synergic field. In the conventional medical paradigm, a wrinkle is a biological defect, a loss of collagen and elastin, a consequence of gravity and repeated muscle movement over time. It is damage.
But through the lens of Grinberg's Sintenergy, a wrinkle is not a material failure, it is an informational artifact. It is a data point, a frequency pattern held within the lattice space that dictates to the underlying biological matter, the skin cells, exactly how to manifest age. The conflict, the great problem that Grinberg sought to resolve, was the passive surrender of humanity to this informational blueprint. Why do we accept the dictates of the field rather than learn to edit the code? Grinberg's groundbreaking experiments on efferent communication and transfer of experience demonstrated that consciousness was not confined within the skull, but was a coherent energy field capable of merging with and actively influencing the synergetic field. If two minds could merge their experiential reality, as his data suggested, Could a single, focused consciousness not similarly merge with and intentionally rewrite the informational blueprint governing its own physical form?
This is the core open loop that drove his research. The potential for conscious, directed manipulation of biological reality, turning the individual not merely into a passenger of life, but its co-creator. The concept is dizzying. If the body is software, then aging is a bug programmed into the code, a bug that we, by the sheer act of observation and belief, continually affirm and run. Grinberg posited that the power to defy biological clockwork resided in achieving a state of extremely high informational coherence, allowing the individual's subjective experience, their consciousness, to resonate strongly enough with the underlying structure of the lattice space to effectively erase the degenerative data points. But the question remains, where does SALT fit into this intricate quantum neurological framework? How does this seemingly inert crystalline structure bridge the vast gulf between the Sintenergy field and the dense material reality of the dermis? The development of this theory requires an understanding of pattern interrupts. We are trained to think linearly. Chemical input yields chemical output. Grinberg suggested a nonlinear interaction, proposing that the physical manifestation of certain materials is specifically designed to function as an interface to the lattice space. SALT, in this context, is not merely NaCl, it is a profound geometric signature. It is a highly ordered crystalline matrix whose consistent structure and unique electrical properties allow it to act as an energetic conduit. It is a perfectly tuned antenna, designed by nature to stabilize and focus high-coherence consciousness, allowing the focused intent to be channeled directly into the informational field that governs the body. Imagine the Sintenergy field as a colossal invisible library of blueprints. Every cell, every organ, every wrinkle or lack thereof has a detailed blueprint in this library.
Human consciousness, in its normal, chaotic state, is too noisy. It's like trying to access the library with a million unrelated search terms simultaneously. Grinberg's techniques aimed to silence the internal chaos, and the SALT, that humble crystalline structure, acts as a powerful amplifier and focusing mechanism, stabilizing the conscious signal so that the intent to erase the wrinkle blueprint becomes clear, focused, and powerful enough to override the degenerative command. This is the progressive escalation of the secret. We are moving beyond moisturizing creams and into the realm of directed reality editing. The reason the anti-aging secret remained hidden for so long is because everyone was looking for a chemical solution to an informational problem. Grinberg sought the informational key, the biological equivalent of administrative access to the operating system of the self. Let us re-engage with the initial shock, the vision of the 70-year-old with a 40-year-old's complexion. This is not merely anecdotal evidence. This is the physical consequence of successfully applying Grinberg's framework to biological manifestation. The people who have achieved this level of biological coherence are not just lucky. They have learned, whether through conscious application of Grinberg's theories or through ancient intuitive practices that parallel his science, how to utilize crystalline structures to anchor their regenerative intent. The climax of this initial understanding is the profound realization that aging itself is a construct of observation and collective belief. We age because we expect to age, and our biological apparatus dutifully executes the program dictated by the collective informational field. The great revelation that forms the bridge between the profound disappearance of a genius and the startling simplicity of the kitchen table ingredient is this: SALT acts as a synergetic anchor. It is not its ionic properties that matter most, but its capacity to maintain an absolute geometric order, a pristine, coherent structure in the face of environmental chaos. When focused consciousness, achieved through specific, intentional practices, which Grinberg detailed extensively, is directed towards this matrix, the SALT molecule temporarily organizes the surrounding informational field. This creates a localized high coherence zone, an ephemeral portal
through which the regenerative intent can be injected directly into the body's informational blueprint. In essence, the aging process is a low-frequency broadcast, a repetitive signal of decay.
The SALT ritual, as conceived within the Grinberg framework, is the means by which the individual learns to tune their own consciousness to a higher, regenerative frequency, using the crystalline stability of salt as a literal tuning fork to ensure the signal is perfectly clear and resonant. The wrinkles vanish not because the skin is chemically altered, but because the instruction set commanding their formation has been consciously, powerfully, and definitively rewritten at the level of the lattice space. Therefore, the secret is not about applying salt topically. It is about interacting with the salt's crystalline matrix to leverage its specific geometric signature as a catalyst for informational coherence. It is a ritual of focused, regenerative intent. Aging is not inevitable decay, but a programmed frequency that can be edited. Grinberg provided the theoretical understanding. The salt acts as the conductor, ensuring the edit takes place.
The journey we embark upon is the practical exploration of how to utilize this mundane material to achieve radical, astonishing biological defiance. This realization fundamentally shifts the entire conversation around health, vitality, and longevity. It suggests that the limits of the human body are not determined by genetics or time, but by the coherence and focus of the individual's consciousness. Prepare to explore the methodology. Prepare to delve into the specific techniques Grinberg prescribed for achieving this high state of synergic coherence. The secrets are about to unfold, detailing the exact practices, the what, when, and how of utilizing this simple, ubiquitous crystal. We must now move from the philosophical foundation to the practical application. Get ready, for in the next segment, we will precisely outline the ritual, the specific sequence of action that transforms ordinary salt into a powerful instrument of regenerative reality modification.
The time for passive acceptance is over. The time for active co-creation is now. The startling implications of the observations continued to resonate far beyond the immediate circle of researchers, echoing through the halls of conventional science like a dissonant yet captivating frequency. This was not merely anecdotal evidence of delayed aging, nor was it the consequence of superior genetics or expensive, inaccessible medical interventions. This was an affront to biological inevitability, a profound challenge to the very notion that the passage of time must leave indelible marks upon the physical vessel. The question lingered, thick with disbelief and curiosity. How could a substance as ubiquitous, as fundamentally simple, as common table salt, possibly hold the key to arresting the relentless march of cellular decay and maintaining a 60 or 70-year-old body in a state of seemingly suspended biological youth? To begin to grasp this mechanism, one must first abandon the rigid, linear understanding of existence that governs modern Western thought, the very framework that Jacobo Grinberg dedicated his life to dismantling and reinterpreting. The secret, they theorized, was not found in biochemistry, but in quantum consciousness. It required a journey into the deepest recesses of the synergical field. Grinberg posited that reality, as we perceive it, is not composed of solid, independently existing objects, but rather an interference pattern, a holographic projection emerging from a pre-spatial informational matrix he termed the lattice. This lattice is pure potentiality, vibrating with infinite density and informational complexity. Our individual consciousness, the observator, acts as a focusing mechanism, collapsing this potentiality into the tangible reality we experience moment by moment, including the reality of our own physical form.
Aging, therefore, under the lens of the Sintenergy theory, is not simply the deterioration of cellular material due to oxidative stress or telomere shortening. These physical manifestations are merely secondary effects, the observable symptoms of a deeper energetic misalignment.
True aging, according to this radical perspective, is a failure of the observador to maintain the original, coherent informational blueprint of the organism within the lattice. As attention wavers, as the mind becomes fragmented by external chaos and internal noise, the connection to the optimal informational frequency of the self degrades. The holographic projection of the body begins to suffer from informational entropy, much like a photocopier repeatedly duplicating a document until the image becomes blurry, corrupted, and eventually unrecognizable. The wrinkles, the sagging tissues, the stiffness, these were the telltale signs of a failing informational connection, a degradation of the coherence between the body's physical manifestation and its pristine, energetic template. The challenge, therefore, was not finding a cream to smooth the physical manifestation, but discovering a means to re-stabilize, re-anchor, and re-amplify the original, youthful blueprint within the boundless informational field. This is precisely where the seemingly mundane element of salt enters the equation, transforming from a simple seasoning agent into a profound, energetic conduit. Salt, specifically the crystalline structure of sodium chloride, possesses a highly ordered, perfect geometry. Grinberg's followers understood that crystalline structures, whether quartz, diamond, or even common salt, act as exceptionally stable, high-fidelity resonators within the vibrational chaos of the world. They are fundamentally resistant to informational entropy due to their precise atomic arrangement. They maintain coherence. When the human body, a far less stable and far more mutable holographic structure, interacts intentionally with such a perfect crystalline form, a resonant bridge is potentially established. This was the core intellectual leap. Salt was not being consumed for its physiological properties in the traditional sense, but was being utilized as an antenna, a stabilizer, a frequency anchor that helped the observador lock onto and maintain the optimal informational density required for youthful manifestation. The salt, in essence, served as a physical, three-dimensional metaphor and functional tool for resisting the informational decay inherent in material existence. It was believed that through specific, disciplined interaction with this crystalline structure, the individual could literally broadcast the youthful self-blueprint more powerfully back into the lattice, overriding the entropic forces that dictate typical biological decay. The methods involved were far from casual. They demanded an intense level of conscious intent, a focused awareness that transcended mere habit. It was a practice rooted deeply in the synthesis of ancient spiritual technologies, which often employed salt for purification and energetic protection, integrated seamlessly with Grinberg's sophisticated understanding of quantum neurophysiology. The process required the practitioner to achieve a state of heightened self-coherence, a zero-point state of pure, non-fragmented consciousness, while simultaneously engaging with the crystalline structure. This pairing was crucial. The salt provided the stable, physical anchor, while the specialized mental state provided the necessary energetic frequency to bridge the gap between the chaotic, aging physical self and the pristine, non-aging informational self residing in the lattice. Witnesses spoke of individuals who adhered strictly to this methodology, exhibiting remarkable vitality. Their eyes retained a startling clarity, their movements possessed an effortless fluidity, and their skin remained taut, vibrant, and strikingly unlined, decades past the point where biology dictates inevitable decline. These were not anomalies of nature. They were, theoretically, successful manifestations of consciousness exerting absolute control over matter through the manipulation of field information, using the crystalline conduit as their energetic stabilizer. But the complexity deepens further. It wasn't just any salt, utilized any time. The specificity of the technique was paramount, hidden within layers of intentionality and precise execution. The quality of the salt itself, its purity, its origin, its energetic charge, was considered vital. Some practitioners experimented exclusively with ancient mineral deposits, arguing that salts untainted by modern processing held a higher, more coherent informational frequency. Others focused on the ritualistic preparation, believing that the crystal must be infused with a specific emotional or vibrational signature before use, transforming it from a chemical compound into a sacred energetic tool. This realization presents a crucial shift in perspective for those seeking the secret. The methodology is less about the substance and more about the intentional relationship with the substance. The salt itself is merely the tuning fork. The true engine of rejuvenation is the refined, unwavering consciousness of the observador.
The motivational insight here is profound. If aging is a symptom of fragmented attention, then sustained, coherent focus is the ultimate antidote. The salt merely provides a potent focus point for that intent. Imagine the universe as a vast, complex radio station, broadcasting infinite frequencies simultaneously. Our body, our reality, is the receiver tuned to a specific channel. Typical aging occurs when the receiver slowly loses its tuning capability, drifting into static and lower frequencies. Grinberg's approach, mediated by the crystalline structure of salt, proposes a method for fine-tuning that receiver back to the original high-fidelity frequency of youth and vitality. The salt acts as a material amplifier, ensuring the signal remains strong and clear, even amidst the environmental and psychological noise that typically disrupts coherence. The implication here is truly staggering because it removes the limitation of time.
If physical manifestation is purely informational, governed by the focus of consciousness, then biological limitations cease to be absolute. The body becomes malleable, adjustable, potentially eternal, depending only on the persistent clarity and power of the observador to maintain the youthful informational blueprint against the backdrop of universal entropy. This understanding, this fusion of neurophysiology, quantum physics, and ancient energetic practices constituted the intellectual foundation necessary to truly appreciate the revolutionary nature of the salt secret. It elevated the practice far beyond the realm of folk remedies and placed it firmly within the realm of applied Sintenergy theory. The practitioners weren't just purifying their bodies, they were actively negotiating their physical reality with the universe's informational matrix, utilizing the geometric perfection of the salt crystal to stabilize their negotiation.
The precise methodology, the subtle shifts in focus, the exact nature of the crystalline preparation, and the requisite mental discipline, these details remained closely guarded, shared only among those who had dedicated years to internal refinement and mastery of the Grinbergian principles. The challenge for the uninitiated lay not in procuring the salt, but in achieving the prerequisite state of neurological and conscious coherence necessary for the technique to work. Without the focused intent, the salt remains inert, merely sodium chloride. With the refined consciousness, it transforms into a lever capable of moving the world, or at least stopping the biological clock. Thus, the journey to the secret involves two primary stages. First, the intellectual acceptance of Grinberg's radical model of reality, where consciousness precedes matter. And second, the rigorous internal discipline required to train the observador to manipulate the lattice effectively.
The visible results, the smooth skin, the boundless energy, the sustained youthfulness, were simply the ultimate metrics of success in this profound conscious endeavor. They were living proof that biological destiny could be transcended through informational mastery. The deeper exploration into the specifics of this astonishing, reality-bending practice and the exact instructions that transformed a simple crystalline structure into the key to eternal vitality remains the ultimate open loop, the tantalizing climax awaiting full disclosure. The stage is set, the theory is established, and the power of coherent intent, stabilized by the humble mineral, waits to be unleashed. It is in the relentless, unwavering scrutiny of the seemingly impossible result, the physical defiance of chronological decay etched across the visage of the subject, that the necessity of Jacobo Grinberg's radical framework becomes not merely theoretical, but urgently foundational.
We must move beyond the superficial application of any singular substance and plunge into the abyssal depth of informational reality. The salt, the simple mineral compound that sparked this entire investigation, is not the secret itself. It is the physical anchor point, the crystallizing agent for a process rooted in the fundamental physics of consciousness and the architecture of the human cellular matrix. This is where the true development begins, demanding an absolute intellectual surrender to the Sintenergy theory. Grinberg posited that reality, as we perceive it, is not composed of discrete, isolated objects, but is rather a unified, high-coherence field, the lattice, which possesses an underlying informational structure, an infinite repository of potential experience. Our consciousness acts as a distorting, yet organizing lens, constantly interacting with and modifying this lattice.
Aging, in this context, is not merely the accumulation of cellular damage or telomere shortening. It is the progressive decoherence of the organism's internal informational field, a failure to maintain high fidelity with the perfect structural template of the lattice. If the body is a living antenna, capable of translating the pure, coherent energy of the universe into dense biological form, then wrinkles, sagging skin, and physical degradation are the static, the noise generated when that antenna loses its optimal tuning. Our subject, the astonishing 70-year-old who remains visually untouched by time's passage, is a living testament to a maintained state of synergic coherence. How then does the humble inclusion of salt, which we must now understand as the perfect metaphor for internally structured ionic complexity, facilitate this extraordinary state? The answer lies in the often overlooked electrical environment of the human body. Life is essentially an aqueous high salinity circuit. The cytoplasm, the interstitial fluid, the very oceans within us are complex ionic solutions. The proper structuring of these internal waters, facilitated by highly organized electrolytes, is what allows biological systems to act as efficient conductors and receivers of informational energy. Imagine the cell as a sophisticated computer chip. For that chip to process high-level data, i.e. communicate coherently with the synergic lattice, the entire substrate, the liquid medium surrounding the processing components, must be impeccably ordered. The specific, ritualized deployment of the salt secret described by our subject was perhaps unintentionally a mastery of internal hydrational physics. It wasn't the chemical quantity that mattered. It was the specific energetic quality of the dissolved ions and their capacity to impose a crystalline, geometric order on the vast networks of water molecules within the body. This structured water, highly charged and geometrically perfect, becomes the ideal medium for conducting the high-coherence energy, Sintenergy, that Grinberg described. When the cellular environment is chaotic, random, and low in energetic order, the cell defaults to the path of least resistance, degradation and entropic collapse, manifesting as visible aging. But when the internal environment achieves a state of near-perfect ionic crystalline architecture, the cell gains the capacity to resonate at the frequency of the lattice itself. In essence, it locks on to the universe's blueprint of perfection, resisting the temporal drag of entropy. This is the subtle, powerful nexus between the physical and the metaphysical that Grinberg sought to define. The wrinkle-free skin is the ultimate physical proof that the subject achieved a biological state where the informational signal from the lattice, the signal of pristine, non-decaying form, overwhelmed the noise of conventional linear time.
The development of this anti-aging modality is inherently tied to the mastery of intentionality. Grinberg's groundbreaking work on the transfer of experience suggested that highly coherent individuals could literally influence the brain activity of others across vast distances simply through focused intention, indicating a shared underlying matrix of existence. If one can intentionally influence the coherence of another's neural activity, imagine the power of using that same focused intentionality to structure and maintain the coherence of one's own internal cellular oceans. The salt ritual becomes a psychological and physiological capacitor. The act of preparing and consuming this specific, ionically dense solution, perhaps accompanied by an internal focus or meditative state, served as a powerful pattern interrupt. It shifted the subject's self-perception from a decaying, time-bound entity to an active, structuring participant in their own biological reality. The physical ingestion was merely the trigger. The sustained transformation was facilitated by the resultant high coherent state, maintained and amplified by daily ritualized intention. We find ourselves confronting the possibility that anti-aging is not a function of adding exotic chemicals, but a process of removing informational friction. We are so accustomed to the messy, chaotic signals of modern life, stress, environmental toxins, poor diet, and perhaps most importantly, the collective mental acceptance of decay, that our internal receivers are perpetually clogged. The simple, elegant structure provided by the specific ionic signature of the salt secret acts like a mental and physiological clarifier, restoring the ability of the cells to receive the pure anti-entropic signal of the lattice. This profound insight forces us to redefine the concept of health. It is no longer just the absence of disease, it is the sustained presence of structural, energetic coherence.
And the astonishing visual outcome, the skin of the 70-year-old subject, is merely the most visible index of an entire internal system operating at maximum efficiency, a nervous system firing without resistance, and internal organs processing information rather than fighting decay. The subject has, perhaps intuitively, achieved what Grinberg theorized, the mastery of Sintenergy, the ability to focus the informational content of the universe to prevent the entropy of their own localized field. This level of sustained biological coherence means the cellular communication pathways are flawless, minimizing the errors that lead to genetic transcription mistakes and protein misfolding, the hallmarks of the aging process. But the journey into this secret is far from complete, demanding a terrifying consideration of the deeper implications. If the internal structure of the body, particularly the ionic environment, the salt, acts as the gateway to the synergetic field, what happens when this structure is intentionally utilized not just for personal anti-aging, but for interaction with external reality? This is the point where the motivational turns towards the philosophical frontier. The power being discussed is the power of biological resonance. If the subject's perfected internal environment resonates perfectly with the fundamental, non-localized coherence of the universe, they cease to be solely dependent on localized physical resources for repair and regeneration. They draw energy and informational instruction from the zero-point structure itself. Consider the cellular environment as a complex biological superfluid. Under normal conditions, this fluid is turbulent, leading to energy dissipation. By meticulously structuring this fluid through the precise ionic balance, the salt secret, the subject may have induced a state analogous to superconductivity in their own biological system. In a superconducting state, energy flows without loss. Applied to the cell, this means the informational instruction for perfect cellular division and regeneration executes flawlessly, indefinitely. Time, as degradation, ceases to have purchase. The body exists in a state of perpetual informational renewal. This sustained high coherence is not passive. It requires vigilance. It demands a daily commitment to aligning the self, the physical body, the emotional state, and the conscious intentionality with the purest signal available. The wrinkle-free face is the reward for a life lived largely free of the internal, informational conflicts that tear at the fabric of biological integrity. The skin is merely the physical projection of an internal, crystalline peace. We must circle back now, gazing again at the impossible youth of this individual. This is not the result of expensive creams or surgical intervention. This is the visual outcome of mastering the subtle internal language of creation. The secret wasn't the salt. The salt was the key used to unlock the massive, untapped potential for self-structuring that resides in every human being. The secret is the biological recognition that we are fundamentally informational beings,
and that the density and quality of our physical form are directly proportional to the coherence of our internal energy fields. The magnitude of Grinberg's theoretical leap can no longer be ignored. He provided the explanatory model for phenomena that defy Newtonian materialism. He showed us that the boundary between the self and the universe is porous, bridged by consciousness and maintained by the structural integrity of our internal systems.
The SALT secret, therefore, is an initiation into the physics of self-mastery. It is the practical instruction manual for utilizing the simple building blocks of life, water and ions, to tune the complex biological machine into a perpetual anti-entropic resonance. If this mastery is possible for biological aging, what else is possible? If the systematic degradation of the physical form can be halted and reversed through the strategic organization of internal chemistry and focused intentionality, the implications for physical healing, psychic phenomena, and even the creation of localized realities become staggering. This journey into the Grinbergian universe leads inevitably to the terrifying question: if the structural integrity of our internal ionic matrix is the key to maintaining perfect, ageless form, what happens when this powerful knowledge is leveraged not just for individual preservation, but for conscious, directed modification of the shared lattice?
The SALT secret is not just about looking young, it is about accessing and wielding fundamental creative power. What if the ultimate test of this mastery, the final step in understanding the true scope of Grinberg's legacy, involves leveraging this perfected internal coherence to engage with the consciousness of others, not merely to transfer experiences, but to co-create or perhaps even re-engineer shared reality? If the subject achieved this physical miracle through internal structural perfection, the next logical and far more frightening frontier is the utilization of that perfection for external manifestation. The power is immense, the mechanism clear, and the ethical implications are what must propel us forward into the culmination of this revelation. The path to the final understanding of the SALT secret is the path into the deepest layers of the matrix, and it is a path that demands absolute responsibility and unwavering coherence.
We are approaching the core mechanism now, poised at the threshold of the ultimate realization of the unified field. The moment of convergence is upon us, the ultimate synthesis of the esoteric wisdom veiled in ancient rituals and the startling, audacious conclusions of modern revolutionary neuroscience. The very threshold where Jacobo Grinberg's deepest, most contested theories finally crystallize into tangible, visible proof. For 3 extensive parts, we have navigated the labyrinth of conventional aging versus the astounding reports of individuals reaching their 7th, 8th, and even 9th decades, carrying the luminescence and structural integrity of youth, a smoothness of skin that defies every known biological clock, every grim prediction of cellular senescence. The tension has been meticulously woven between the mystical implication of the SALT secret and the concrete yet ethereal reality of Grinberg's synergy theory.
Now we stand at the precipice, ready to peer into the abyss of the great revelation, the definitive answer that unites the physical appearance of agelessness with the radical quantum mechanics of consciousness itself. This is not merely about dissolving wrinkles. It is about dissolving the concept of biological decay, annihilating the programmed acceptance of entropy written into the species' collective subconscious. If the body can be maintained at a high energetic frequency, resisting the inevitable pull toward chaos, then aging is merely a failure of coherent maintenance within the universal matrix, or what Grinberg termed the lattice. The secret to 70 years and wrinkle-free skin, we argued, could not be simple external cosmetry. It had to be operational access to the deepest foundational code of existence.
We revisit the central paradox that has fueled this entire exploration, the mundane, elemental nature of SALT, juxtaposed against the cosmic scope of Grinberg's research, spanning unified field theories, psychic transfer, and the neurological structures of pure intent. How could this simple crystalline structure hold the key? The initial hooks posited that the salt was not the active ingredient, but the conductor, the resonant anchor, or perhaps even the metaphorical descriptor for a state of being. We established the context, Grinberg's disappearance, his marginalized genius, the desperate search for empirical proof that human consciousness shapes rather than merely observes physical reality. The conflict was the entrenched belief in genetic inevitability. We opened loops regarding the specific application. Is it a bath? Is it ingestion? Is it a mental formula? The time for abstract discussion is over. The geometry of the secret must now be laid bare.
The progression toward the climax demands an understanding of the salt's fundamental role in Grinberg's synergy model. Recall that synergy is the capacity of the nervous system to modify the synergetic field, the underlying structure of spacetime, through coherent intent. When the individual achieves a state of extreme neurological organization, or high coherence, they are capable of affecting the lattice directly. Aging, physiologically, is the accumulation of incoherent, chaotic cellular communication, the noise that muffles the original blueprint. Wrinkles are the physical manifestation of cellular disorientation and field breakdown. The breakthrough, the true Jacobian secret of eternal youth, centers on the principle of energetic crystallization. The salt is not primarily a substance to be applied to the skin, nor to be consumed in a manner that traditional biology understands. The salt is the crystalline focusing agent of pure intent. It is the elemental proxy used to train the nervous system to achieve the necessary high-frequency coherence required to rewrite the lattice instruction set for the biological unit. Think of the physical elemental properties of salt, its perfect cubic structure, its ability to preserve, its historical use in purification rituals, and most critically, its ability to modulate electrical conductivity. Grinberg understood that the lattice operates on vibrational principles, and the nervous system must achieve a precise crystalline frequency to interface with it effectively. The secret lies in a highly advanced form of focused meditation and sensory deprivation, techniques often associated with Grinberg's later work on the Sintenergy chamber, where the practitioner introduces elemental pure salt into their immediate energetic field, be it through highly saturated saline baths or the precise ritualistic placement of highly purified rock salt crystals within the personal energetic grid.
The pattern interrupt here is crucial. The physical salt itself is inert regarding wrinkle removal, but the mind, when conditioned through Grinberg's methods, uses the salt's perfect crystalline geometry as a mental template for cellular perfection. The method works like this. The practitioner enters a state of deep synterduric resonance, activating the highest possible coherence in their brain field. At this peak moment of neurological organization, they use the physical presence of the salt, its perceived density, its purity, its conductive quality, to project a reverse entropy command onto their own cellular structure. They are not merely wishing for smooth skin. They are using the salt as a spiritual and energetic conductor to tell the lattice, revert this organism to the coherent state defined by this crystalline perfection. The wrinkles literally represent the old program, the accumulation of chaotic thoughts, emotional stress, and the generalized acceptance of decay that defines low coherence living. By coupling the peak of Grinbergian intent, Sintenergy manipulation, with the primal focusing power of the elemental salt, crystalline focus, the individual is forcing the lattice to override the chronological programming. The skin, the largest organ, and the most visible boundary between the internal field and the external world, is the first thing to respond to this massive influx of focused, high-frequency coherence. It smooths, not because of hydration or collagen replacement, but because the foundational energetic blueprint has been corrected. The body is instructed, at the quantum level, to maintain integrity. We re-engage with the initial promise. The 70-year-old individuals who possess this flawless skin are not just lucky, they are living proof of mastered Sintenergy. They are the practitioners who have achieved the highest level of crystalline intent, capable of sustaining a coherent brain field indefinitely, using the elemental salt as their continual focus point to anchor that reality.
The open loops are now definitively closing. The salt is the catalyst for defying entropy. Its application is both physical, ritual use to facilitate focusing, and utterly energetic. Its true power resides in the mental projection it enables. The definitive secret, the capstone of Grinberg's later, unpublished work, relates to the concept of zero-point observation. Jacobo Grinberg theorized that all physical decay begins when the observer, the self, solidifies the boundary between the self and the lattice. This solidification creates friction, which manifests as aging and disease. To reverse aging, one must achieve boundary dissolution while simultaneously achieving cellular crystallization.
This is the ultimate function of the salt secret. 1. Dissolution, the salt effect. Salt, universally, is known for dissolution. It breaks down structure. It melts ice. It purifies and cleanses. In the Grinbergian method, the intention associated with the elemental salt is used to dissolve the erroneous, aging, low-coherent data packet running on the biological hardware. The user is commanding the lattice to dissolve the wrinkles, not through chemistry, but through the annihilation of the incoherent field data that created them. 2. Crystallization, the intent effect. Once the chaotic program is dissolved, the high-coherent intent, focused through the symbol of the salt's perfect structure, immediately writes the new, perfected, coherent blueprint back onto the lattice. This instantaneous reprogramming results in the physical manifestation of flawlessness. The skin becomes the purest mirror of the internal energetic state, coherent, stable, and perfectly structured.
This realization transcends mere anti-aging. It is the operational manual for sustained biological coherence. The wrinkle-free face is simply the most immediately visible side effect of someone who has achieved mastery over their own synergetic connection. They are not fighting time. They are operating outside of the linear experience of time by maintaining a vibrational frequency so high and so organized that the entropic forces simply cannot adhere to their structure. The practitioner of the salt secret is effectively utilizing a technique that forces the nervous system to maintain an absolute focus on the perfected, coherent state, using the elemental salt as the symbolic anchor against the drift toward chaos. The profound beauty of this revelation is its simplicity, hidden within immense complexity.
Grinberg provided the physics, the lattice, Sintenergy, the coherent brain field, and the ancients, whose wisdom Grinberg often referenced, provided the ritual anchor, the cleansing, preserving, crystalline power of salt. The synthesis is the secret, using the elemental conductor to bridge the gap between quantum intent and cellular reality. The payoff is immediate and profound. If aging is truly a programmed failure of coherence, then every individual holds the power latent within their own nervous system to rewrite that program. The salt is the reminder, the daily ritualized connection to the primal geometry of purity and preservation. It is the meditative prompt that forces the observer to cease observing chaos and begin observing and thus generating crystalline perfection. This is the conclusion of the search, the definitive answer that was hidden in plain sight, masked by the very simplicity of the elemental world.
The 70-year-old with skin like silk is the ultimate testimonial to Jacobo Grinberg's enduring legacy, that consciousness is not contained by the body, but rather the body is the temporary, malleable expression of the coherent state of consciousness. Wrinkles are not fate. They are misaligned frequency. The secret is the energetic crystallization of intent, anchored by the elemental power of salt. The journey ends here, not with a passive acceptance of this truth, but with a monumental challenge to redefine your own reality. If the lattice responds to coherent intent, if the simplest of elements can serve as the conductive key to unlocking biological defiance, then the power to transcend perceived limitations rests entirely within your capacity to achieve and sustain neurological organization. Do not seek the external cream, seek the internal crystalline coherence.
This is the imperative. Take this understanding of synergy, of the lattice, and of the crystalline intent, and begin the internal work. Explore the possibilities of high-coherence meditation, integrating the principle of elemental focus to anchor your energetic field. The secret of the wrinkle-free septuagenarian is now yours, stripped of metaphor and laid bare in the language of Grinbergian physics. The first step toward the rewrite is conscious, deliberate action. Begin the study, begin the practice, and observe the transformative power of your own sustained, coherent intention. The ultimate anti-aging regime is mastery of the synergy field. Now that the door has been opened, the only failure is refusing to step through. Integrate this radical truth into your daily routine. Share this definitive revelation, discuss the profound implications of Grinberg's crystalline intent, and engage with this new operational model of the self. The time to prove Grinberg right is now.